This is Gold TV on BBC Two. Now, from 1970, a portrait of the finest British footballer of the modern era, Hugh Mclllvenney, steps inside the world of Georgie Best.
Just a boy from the country of Ireland, and I knew I could make you shine. Could you move like a downtown dancer, with your hair hung down like a mane, and your feet played tricks like a juggler, as you weave to the sound of your name? Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast Boy. Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast Joy. They said, Georgie, Georgie, keep your feet on the ground. Georgie, Georgie, when you listen to the sound. Georgie, Georgie, put a light on your name. Play the game. Play the game. Boy, play the game. Play the game. Play the game.
The city of Manchester is, among other things, a vivid testimony to the remarkable appeal of association football. As Manchester is rapidly transformed from the town that grew around the textile mills in the 19th century to one of the most strikingly modern cities in Britain, few traditions survive. But one that does is the people's passion for football. Supporters of Manchester United, one of the city's two great clubs, are inclined to call their team simply the religion. Certainly the greatest players are scarcely less than gods. The football star remains the ultimate working-class hero. Other poor boys may make it as film actors or writers, but their very success cuts them off from the tribe. The point about the footballer as folk hero is that he stays at the heart of the tribe, part of its most compelling ritual. He's always within reach. You can have a slice of him every Saturday. Today, there is no footballer with whom the anonymous mass would rather identify than a slim, black-haired Ulsterman named George Best. At 23, Best is accepted by worshipping fans and professional experts alike as the most lavishly gifted player in Europe, if not in the world. So identifying with him requires rather a lot of imagination. His game is an amalgam of superb, almost unnatural balance, unbreakable spirit, a delicacy of touch that stays true no matter how fast he moves, limitless ingenuity and ambition, and force out of all proportion to his physique. He carries onto the field a constant threat of the incredible. Since he came to Manchester from Belfast 8 years ago, Best has had only one landlady, Mrs. Fullaway. If her semi is a kind of shrine, the pilgrims are young and raucous.
Hey, Georgie!
The thing I'll never forget is when the scout came to the house and he just walked in and quite casually said, "Would you like to play for Manchester United?" I was only 15 at the time, and even if I finish tomorrow, I've been at the top for 5-6 years now. But I think wherever I go, or whatever I do from now, I don't think I'll ever forget those words.
He's like my own son, really. He came as a boy of 15 through Mr. Armstrong, the United Scouts. He came with another little fellow, a 15-year-old, Eric McMordy, I believe plays for Middlesbrough now, and he's been here ever since. And I feel very proud of him when I see him on television. And I don't think there's another footballer like him.
The word charisma might almost have been invented for Best, and most managers would be overshadowed in his presence. But not Sir Matt Busby, who survived an air disaster to make Manchester United the club it is.
It was the start of a season when these two boys had come over in Belfast, and George Best was one of them. And I sort of detected something in his manner, his approach to the ball. It was uncanny. He had this, obviously, this tremendous balance for a boy. It was the way he seemed to make the ball do what he wanted to do. In all my experience in football, I have never seen a player who could beat a man or men so close and in so many ways. When men are on top of him, when it seems quite impossible to do it, he still does it. He has had this tremendous publicity. And I think, basically, it has not changed the lad at all. He's an attraction to a public. He's got something to sell them. Very often I get telephone calls and letters about George being here at a certain time at night and there at a certain time of night. And of course, needless to say, I'm always after him, and I think it's not to his good. But many times I have checked these sort of stories and found them untrue. But I've always thought, looking at him on the field of play, playing as he does, the running he does, the knocks he gets, he's up and back at it again. And this was always the evidence, to me at any rate, that he knew his life was football to start with, and he kept himself in a true professional way, able and capable of playing the game.
Nevertheless, Best's hectic social life is not a journalist's fiction. His face is more than familiar on the discotheque circuit of Manchester and London, though only the more exclusive places get his custom. His undeniable good looks and the aura of excitement that attends him have the girls standing in line. He's not bad at dealing with cues.
Good evening, George. How are you? Nice to see you this evening.
One of his social bases in Manchester is Blinkers, a discotheque owned by a lively and rather talkative bookmaker named Selwyn Demi.
In the normal way, if anybody comes into the club without a shirt and a tie on, Stefan will say, sorry, you're not correctly dressed. It could be a star, it could be a celebrity, it could be anybody. But if Georgie Best comes to the club, he says, good evening, George. He is the only one. Creates a little bit of a stir amongst the other members, but we soon shut them up and everything was well. Straight away, 2 seconds, it's over. In the corner, inconspicuous, out of sight, as you might say. He likes the atmosphere of people. Never dances, by the way. Never dances. I've always thought that he was shy and lonely and sad. But I don't think it's that, in as much as that he just wants a true friend, you know? But a person that doesn't like him just doesn't know him. The greatest quality, I would say, here was a boy that made it so big, yet it never went to his head.
I don't think I'll ever be able to tell which people want me as myself or which want me as a footballer, as a personality. And it's very difficult because some of them might be very good actors. But it's something I'll just have to get used to. I used to take them all, but not now. I'm very suspicious of people. I think most of the time I can tell. But there's always a few that you're never sure of.
His may be a whirlwind career, but no whirlwind ever had a stiller centre. Events and people wash over him and leave hardly a trace. There's a self-confident coolness about him that unnerves some men and fascinates most women. He seems to have a slower psychological pulse than the rest of us.
Again Saturday, and then see you.
Have a nice time, George. Yeah.
Great.
Have a good game tomorrow. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
To go on earning like a film star, Best must be prepared to sweat like a navvy. Late nights must be followed by masochistic mornings in the booming, hangar-like building that accommodates Manchester United's indoor training. Inside or out, training is particularly hard under Wilf McGuinness, successor to Sir Matt Busby as United's manager, and still young enough to urge by example.
Who's the front man? Let John go?
Yes, I think so. 20, 21, 2, 3, come on, George, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well done, George, well done. Come on, John.
Well done, under 30, well done.
Right round, come on.
Best's football is the tip of a commercial iceberg. He regards money from modelling as his most painfully earned income, though ghosted articles in newspapers often make him cringe just as much. All kinds of organisations are now anxious to pay handsomely to exploit the names of footballers.
Usually when people talk to me about what I do, the modelling side of it comes into it. And they ask me, do I enjoy it or why do I do it? Well, mainly I think I do it because of the money, which is very good. I only do it 2 afternoons every 6 months. But I wouldn't say I was head over heels in love with the modelling game.
Okay. This is the golden boot for the golden boy.
Yeah. Quite sure that everybody would like to have a pair of those.
Yes, definitely. £250,000 pairs.
What is the material of it?
This is a genuine golden kid. That's a classic kid. This is Raymond Colwell, our warehouse manager. Kelly Weller, in charge of exporting the company secretary of relations. Since we've now passed the £250,000 pair of football boots, George, Harvey's got a little presentation to do. George, golden boots.
Oh, great.
Congratulations.
Excellent.
And I hope it won't be long before we'll be presenting you with the millionth pair.
I hope so. Thanks very much.
If you'd like to go aside.
I actually got a letter this week from a friend in London asking me for my autograph for Betty Davis. And when you think she's been one of the greatest actresses in films, and she wanted my autograph just because I could play football.
Betty Davis's request was more restrained than many he receives from ladies. Much of the avalanche of mail that descends on Best week after week contains pleas for rather more personal favours.
Thank you. Right, that's it. Yeah, can I have a piece now, please?
Between the Brill Cream and centre parting era of football and pop heroes like Best, there was Dennis Law's generation. Footballers who earned big money and a comparatively sophisticated life without shedding too many of the old values.
Is that my book? Is that my book?
Law, as it happens, would have established his own values in any era. He speaks of Best as teammate and equal.
The only thing that I've got to criticise George Best is that he tends to overdo it individually. He's got a big heart, he's got the ability to beat men, and he's got the ability to score goals. And if you've got these three in football, then you must rank among the greatest players in the world.
Just as there is a great deal of Aberdeen in Dennis Law, so there is much of Belfast in George Best. It is true that he was insulated against some of the city's worst bigotry and violence by voluntary isolation on his council estate, but his boyhood environment obviously contributed to the hardness that has shaken so many big and unscrupulous defenders.
Even now when I go home, if I go outside the estate where I lived, I'm lost. I hardly ever left the area where I was born. I don't think I had any sense of adventure at all. I remember before I left home at 15, being a Protestant, we celebrate in Ireland the 12th of July, where they go around beating these fantastic drums, lambeg drums. No, I couldn't care less whether a person's a Catholic or a Muslim. I think they're all human beings, so I just couldn't care less. So I think if I hadn't played football, I would have stayed in Belfast. Maybe I'd have been throwing stones at the Catholics the same way as a great many other people have been doing.
Ireland's chances of qualifying last year for the World Cup finals rested heavily on their profitably exiled stars and above all on Best. When Best began with characteristic brilliance against Russia in Belfast, there was plenty of optimism. However, in the end, his menace was smothered by marking so close that it was nearly indecent.
I know players that try to hurt me. I've even heard trainers from the bench shouting, "Break the bastard's legs," and I think very nice people. They say afterwards that it's during a game and they didn't really mean it, but when they said it, they meant it. And it makes me feel the only way to get back at them is to make them feel so inferior that they'll never want to play another game of football again in their lives.
But the Belfast match had been drawn, and the Bests were in the mood for a party. They usually are.
Obviously, my mother hates it every time I leave home, but I think secretly my father's very pleased that I'm here. He never ever says to me, "We're very proud of you." Well, he does, but he's got to have a few drinks before he says it.
Oh, obviously I'm very proud of him. Deep down, I'm really very proud of him. I don't say this to everybody.
It's a great feeling to go home, because maybe in the 2 or 3 days, if I've been playing a game, I usually go out with my mother and father afterwards, and we'd probably come home maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and just the three of us, and he'd sit down, put his arms around me, and he'd say things that probably he wouldn't say if he hadn't had a few. I think, well, he's thinking about it anyway. It's a nice sort of setup at home.
You've heard said about Irishmen, same resent most of all other Irishmen getting on in the world. I've heard suggestions that he may be big-headed, but often I've heard that countered immediately by other people who've said, "Oh, don't be talking, you're a rat."
Best takes his looks from his mother. They have a special relationship, not because he's famous, but because he was her first child.
I just seen him going out of my life, you know, probably because he was firstborn and being the only son. I pictured him going away into a country that he knew nothing about, wondered what he would do, because of him being so shy and backward. He was very frail. He walked before he was 10 months old, and he always had the ball. Even at 10 months, he had the ball, and ever from that, he played it right from 10 months. The living room, bedroom, any place at all. Took the ball to bed with him. It hurts me a lot when I listen to stories, especially outside on buses and public transport, even in shops where people don't know who I am. I listen to conversations. I have listened to them. People ridiculing him. They've called him all the names, big head, all the rest of it. On one occasion, I was standing having a drink with one man, and he was actually ridiculing George to me in a football conversation, and he was ridiculing George. And he left the bar that night, and he still didn't know that I was George's mother. So it takes a lot of biting your tongue, I can tell you that.
I think it's the same old story. The local boy left home and made good. And in Ireland, it's such a closed community that I think they love any Irishman doing well. In England, it's 50-50. I think half love me and the other half hate me.
When I saw you, you looked like a diamond as you played in the dust on the ground. Just a boy from the country of Ireland, and I knew I could make you shine. Could you move like a downtown dancer, with your hair hung down like a mane, and your feet played tricks like a juggler as you weaved to the sound of your name. Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast boy. Georgie, Georgie, they call you the Belfast joy. And they said, Georgie, Georgie, keep your feet on the ground. Georgie, Georgie, when you listen to the sound. Georgie, Georgie, put a light on your name. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Play the game. Play the game. Boy, play the game. Play the game. Play the game.
As a rueful opponent has said, probably the only way to stop Best is to give him poison.
How's it going, love?
It
there's a very interesting one here from...
Best's principal cushion against the multiplying pressures of his success is Ken Stanley, a former table tennis champion from Huddersfield.
How's everything going? Okay.
Yeah.
Can I take that book? Have you signed that
I've
book?
signed these, yeah.
Oh, that's fine. I'll get that in the
There's a
post
couple of letters
tonight.
there. I've got one of those.
Well, I'll get those
You
in
can
the
take a
post tonight. That's great. And this ball, have you signed the ball? Oh, well, that's great. I'll take that and get it away. So I'll see you later. Then everything's okay,
yeah,
then?
that's fine.
Very good. He has a tremendous amount of patience. For his age, he's developing an awful lot of understanding. He's still, of course, very young, and one can't expect somebody at his age to sort of have the worldly wisdom of an older man, but he certainly sees this broad picture and plays his part very well in it. He knows where he's going. He's got a fair amount of oil in his can. He's nobody's fool.
Where old-time footballers bought a newsagent's or a pub or sold sports equipment, today's player is more likely to open a boutique. Naturally, Best didn't settle for one. The opening of his third justified a celebration. Best says that no one knows him, but is he enigmatic because he's simple and insensitive, or because of a quality of containment and self-sufficiency that keeps him a private man in a crowd? He's certainly not unintelligent, so maybe part of the answer is just that he knows he has a beautiful talent and is content to let the world take him or leave him on the strength of it.
With the boutique it is first of
There is no sign that the champagne is going to stop flowing for George Best. The empire is growing fast, but he admits to a working-class longing for a permanent symbol of how far he has come. It is costing him £30,000 to provide that symbol on the outskirts of Manchester. The man of property is fond of leading his friends on inspection tours of the unfinished house. The house, the boutiques, the sports goods contracts, and many of the other commercial deals will be there to comfort him when his career is over. But how much comfort will they give? When the torso thickens and the legs are less elastic, the rest of an athlete's life can be ravaged by anticlimax. Scott Fitzgerald knew what he was talking about when he described men who drift on forever, wistfully seeking the dramatic turbulence of some irrecoverable football game. It is a real danger, and no one is more aware of it than George Best.
Playing football is a very sad sport. It's the only thing I've been able to do since I was 15. When you get to maybe 30, 31, you must think that you're on your way out. And it's sad in a way to think that you've got to finish something you really love doing. You miss the excitement, the crowds, the trips with the lads. So as to the future, I don't really know what I'd do. I've got the shops, of course, and other business interests. So financially, I've got nothing to worry about. But I don't think my heart would really be in it all the way.
With the echoes of the cheers ringing loud in my ears, where do I go from here?
To make the perfect food series, first take a hunk of meat.
You know, if there's one thing I'm really passionate about, it's great British cooking.
Add a large helping of humour.
I'd scrub myself down for that and be quite happy.
A medium-sized rubber suit.
The things I do for cooking.
And join star chef Gary Rhodes in Roads Around Britain, tomorrow 8:30 on BBC Two.
And I'll quickly show you my onions.
You won't be able to resist second helpings. Well, Monday evening on BBC Two continues with its football feast, and in a moment, comedy with the Likely Lads. That's followed at 9 by the aggressive tactics of Chile and Italy in their notorious 1962 match. At 5 past, Nick Hornby tries to discover why football is so popular in The Ball is Round. Football Hell is at 9:45, followed at 9:55 by Italy versus Brazil from 1982. A quick break for half-time, and at 10:05, join in with the phone vote to decide the greatest goal ever scored. L'étranger enters the solitary world of the goalkeeper at 10:15, followed by a game of unrelenting drama from 1984, France versus Portugal. And this is BBC Two's Bank Holiday Special, Goal TV. Now, you know what it's like when you're trying to avoid the score of the big match. Well, Bob and Terry are living that nightmare now in a classic edition from 1973 of The Likely Lads.